Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Face Palm Sunday, the segment on the internet where we respond to stupidity on the internet. And you guys probably wanted to see a Deadpool movie review, but instead you're getting this video, which is actually a religious video, believe it or not. I haven't made a religious video here on this channel for a very long time, but this is a special exception because it's tackling one of my favorite characters of all time, which is, of course, Deadpool. And this is written on the website known as Desiring God. I actually was a fan of this guy for a long time growing up as a Christian. I had several books by John Piper. John Piper has his own church, his own website. He's a pastor, a very evangelical Christian, theological seminary type of guy. And he had on his website an article posted titled 7 Questions to Ask Before You Watch Deadpool. Topic: sexual purity. Now, of course, growing up in a Christian household, I was heavily influenced by this concept known as sexual purity, which I'm going to get into in more detail as we go on here. But anytime Christians talk about sexual purity, it gets really cringy. They, to me, become a laughingstock because what they advocate, what they actually say, makes no sense from a biological or evolutionary standpoint whatsoever. Point 1. When will I tear out my eye, if not now? Jesus said, everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. Matthew 5:28-29. Seeing naked women on the screen, or naked men, causes a man or woman to sin with their minds and their desires, and often with their bodies. If Jesus told us to guard our hearts by gouging out our eyes to prevent lust, how much more would he say, don't watch it? Now, for those of you who have not seen the movie Deadpool, no spoilers, but there is some nudity. But come on, it's fucking Deadpool. If you've read any of the MA comics, you would probably expect that. But his point specifically says, and I quote, seeing naked women on the screen or naked men causes a man or woman to sin with their mind and their desires, and often with their bodies. And to an extent, he's actually right. Not the sin part, but the fact is this is what happens when you are repressed sexually in religion. Now, sexual repression in religion is a controlling mechanism to control what you do, your behaviors, your life, and the actions that you commit on a day-to-day basis. Most Christians, if they live in a Christian household that is extremely strict and conservative, probably, and I'm speaking from experience on this one, I didn't get exposed to pornography up until late in life. And by late in life, I mean like 19. I'd seen pornography a few times, but my parents had so many different things on the computer that would block stuff like that. It was never really accessible for me to see. So, you know, your normal 14-year-old, 13-year-old kid who's going through puberty, he's all horny, hot, and bothered. He sees a woman, oh my gosh, she's attractive, gets a boner in public. You know, the typical awkward teen puberty stages that we all go through, men and women. Well, the thing is, I didn't experience that type of exposure to anything up until later in life, and that really fucked me up in the head, and it affected my relationships with people at that current moment, because I had never been exposed to things that I should have been exposed to when I was younger in regards to sexuality. But the problem is that if you literally go to age 18 years old, right, and you've never been experienced to, let's just say, seeing a naked man or a naked woman, and then you see a naked woman for the very first time, you're 19 years old, you never had that exposure to what you should have been exposed to when you're younger, it's gonna overwhelm you. You're gonna be like a rabid dog wanting to defend its meat. You're just gonna be salivating over this fucking nude person, even if they're fucking ugly. Just the fact that you see a naked person, you're gonna be like, oh my god, this is beautiful. Or maybe you'll be grossed out, I don't know. But the point is, when you get exposed to things like sexuality and seeing someone's naked body for the first time when you're that old, 18, 19, how do I say this? You basically go through puberty. The puberty that you should have went when you were 13 and 14, but you didn't get to experience it because of the religious repression that you endured. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for a lot of women and men when they get to this stage in their life when they're finally exposed to seeing somebody who's naked, or a woman sees a naked man for the first time. She's like, wow, I really like dick, or I like the human male form. It's embarrassing for them because they've never experienced that, so their desire to see that is all the more powerful because they've never been exposed to it when they should have when they were younger. So when he says, Seeing naked women or men on the screen causes a man or woman to sin with their minds and desires, often with their bodies. Because in their mind, they're thinking all of these, sexual thoughts about these people. Now, according to Christianity, that's wrong, but I don't think it's wrong at all outside of religion. There's nothing wrong with thinking about someone in a sexual manner or sexual way. It's a perfectly natural, biological, evolutionary thing when you're attracted to someone or you like someone or you've been intimate with someone is to think about them in that type of way. 2. I am longing to see God. I want to see and know God as fully as possible in the life and the next. Watching nudity is a huge hindrance to that pursuit. Blessed are the pure heart, for they shall see God. Matthew blah 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 blah. The defilement of the mind and the heart by watching nudity dulls the heart ability to see and enjoy God. I dare anyone to watch nudity and turn straight to God and give him thanks and enjoy him more because of what you just experienced. Why are you so against the human form? Adam and Eve were fucking nude in the Bible. They were both completely nude. She had her titties out, he had his dick out. Yeah, I know they sinned and then they felt ashamed and all that shit. But it started off with fucking nudity, for God's sake. Your own book started off with nudity, and now nudity's like this terrible thing. A thing that we should look away from. It's not. The male form, the human form, people should have the ability to explore each other's bodies as they see fit. If people love each other outside of marriage and want to see each other naked, there's nothing wrong with that. How does someone naked affect you? I mean, obviously it affects your sinful thoughts in your head. I mean, let's be honest here. If we sit back and say, hey God, you created Adam and Eve, they were both naked from the start. Really, what's wrong with nudity? Number 3, do I care about the souls of the nudes? Souls of the nudes? Really? God calls women to adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control. When we pursue or embrace nudity in our entertainment, we are explicitly endorsing the sin of the woman who sells themselves this way and are therefore uncaring about their souls. They disobey, and if we watch, we say that's okay. So in other words, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with this point yet, basically, don't wear anything that shows any sort of cleavage or makes you feel sexy. Men too, like if you can't wear anything that makes you feel good about yourselves or build any sort of confidence, because if you show too much skin in any region of your body, you are not dressing modesty, and that can cause someone to stumble and sin because of how you dress. Like the people around you, the Christians specifically, don't have control of what they can think about. Well, of course they don't have control of what they can think about because they've been fucking religiously repressed sexually for so long, so when they see a half-skinned ankle from her long skirt, they see an ankle, they fucking just go crazy and they get a boner from seeing a woman's ankle. Like the church that I grew up in was like that. Women had to wear super long skirts that covered all parts of their legs, and literally all you could see was their ankle. And if you wore anything other than that, we'd have people in the church come up to you and say, you shouldn't be wearing this because that's unmodest or you're showing too much skin. That's the church that I grew up in. And it's deplorable that I lived in such a fucking toxic place that shamed everybody for what they wore if it wasn't appropriate to God's standard or the church's standard or the pastor's standard. 4, would I be glad if my daughter played this role? Most Christians are hypocrites in watching nudity because, on one hand, they say by their watching that this is okay, and on the other hand, they know deep down that they would not want their daughter or their wife or their girlfriend to be playing this role. That is hypocrisy. I was actually taught this in the church. So I was taught that if I had a girlfriend and I did anything sexual with her, that I was tainting her for her future husband by being sexually active with her, and would I want that to happen to my daughter? I was told this growing up. And it's really weird that Christians always like to use this point, like, imagine if your daughter was in this position. Imagine if your daughter was on the TV screen naked. Would you want your daughter to be in that situation? And my answer is, if my daughter is of the consenting age and she wants to work in porn, although I may not be a fan of pornography, that is her choice and I will let her do that. If my daughter wants to become a professional actress and she decides that, hey, I want to be in a nude scene in this movie, I have no problem with that because I'm about giving my children and my future children choice to when they are at the proper age to make decisions for themselves and not control every part of their life in order to keep them grasped in this little bubble that religion does for you. To where you have no exposure to the outside world, where you have no exposure to day-to-day life and the real world around us. So would I be glad if my daughter played this role? Fuck yes, I would be fine with my daughter playing the role in a movie if she's nude, if that's what she wants to do, because who am I to tell people what they cannot do with their own body? 5. Am I assuming nudity can be faked? Nudity is not like murder and violence on the screen. Violence on the screen is make-believe. Nobody really gets killed. But nudity is not make-believe. Is that not a bit ironic that you mention how violence in films is make-believe, but your own book actually has real-life violence that's somehow approved and justified by God himself? I find that a bit hypocritical. Oh, the violence in movies is make-believe. But here's my book, which has all of these violent things in it that God approves of and endorses or commands. These actresses are really naked in front of the camera doing exactly what their director says to do with their legs and their hands and their breasts, and they are naked in front of millions of people to see. And so what? So what if they want to be naked in a movie? So what if they want to caress and touch their own breasts in a film? I touch my nipples all the time, and I'm not even in a movie. I'm on YouTube. 6. I'm assuming nudity is necessary for good art. There are creative ways to be true to reality without turning sex into a spectre sport, without putting actors and actresses in morally compromised situations on the set. It is not artistic integrity that is driving nudity on the screen. Underneath all this male sexual appetite driving the business, and following from that is peer pressure in the industry and the desire for ratings that sell. It's not an art that puts nudity in film. It's the appeal of prurience. It sells. So he just said that nudity cannot be an art form. You, my friend, my religious buddy in Christ, are wrong. The fact that you actually think that the human body in general can't be used as a form of art is absolutely pathetic. Why then do you get to use your motherfucking Jesus Christ on a cross with blood all going down his face and hands? How can you call that art? I mean, we all know that art is pretty subjective. But even then, to simply make a bold statement that one's bodily form can never be used in an artistic fashion is simply untrue if you've ever looked at great ancient artists or sculptures back in the early centuries. This is just simply not the case. Why then do we see so many awesome statues of people posing with their fucking, like this, and their penises hopping out, you know, like they're completely nude? Like, there's a reason that type of art was designed and made back in that time. 7. Am I free from doubt? There is one biblical guideline that makes life very simple. Quote, whoever has doubt is condemned if he eats, because the eating is not from faith. For whoever does not proceed from faith is sin. My paraphrase, if you doubt, don't. That would alter the viewing habits of millions, and oh, how sweetly they would sleep with their conscience. So I say again, join me in the pursuit of the kind of purity that God sees and knows, fullness of joy in his presence, and the everlasting pleasure at his right hand. Now let's talk about God's right hand. What does he do up there? Like, with all the porn and all the stuff that's happening right now, child sex slaves in other countries and things like that, what does God do with his right hand? And the quote, purity that God sees, what is that purity, huh? Purity that God sees. God must see a lot of impurity, due to the fact that he's just sitting up there watching and can see everything happening at once. God has no purity because he's exposed to every sort of type of impurity that is happening in the world right now. How can God be so pure if he's being exposed to all these icky things? And please, if you are a viewer of this channel, this video, don't fall into the trap that Christianity or religion in general does in regard to your sexuality. If you're 14, explore yourself, explore your body. There's nothing wrong with starting to see pornography at an early age in your pubescent years, because if you don't, it can really fuck you over later in life. When you're 19 and people see you're acting like a 14-year-old horny boy, because if you've never been exposed to something you should have been exposed to when you were younger. Sexual repression from religion is one of the most toxic, damaging, harmful things I believe that can be done to a child, or a teen later in his life, or adults later in their life, because it's not biologically accurate or healthy for one to repress their sexuality, to repress their desire to see someone naked in their normal biological form. Do not let religion guilt you and control you into being miserable. And I almost forgot again, I was supposed to do this in my last video. thedarkside.teamspeak3.com. That is my TeamSpeak server address. I've met a lot of awesome people, a lot of fans, subscribers, and I'm in there almost every single evening. we play games, chill out, and have fun.